Applying for Medicaid can be an overwhelming process. So it's good to know in advance the types of documents that you're going to need to supply with an application. That way you can work on getting everything gathered and organized to make the process go much smoother. So when you apply for Florida Medicaid, what types of documents do you need? So you definitely need to show who you are. So you can do that through the use of a driver's license or a passport or other official document that you have that shows your name and your age. A birth certificate is also used often to show your age because that's going to be an important factor with Medicaid. You do need to show proof of Florida residency. So you're going to have some utility bills, lease agreement, mortgage document, something that shows your address in Florida belongs to you and that you are actually a Florida resident. You are going to have to show proof that you're a U.S. citizen or your immigration status as well. So there's a grouping of documents that mainly we like to classify as identifying documents because it's really just about identifying who you are, shows that you are, again, either a U.S. citizen or you're here legally, what your immigration status is. It's going to show your age. It's going to prove that you do actually reside here in Florida. So it's all documents concerned with you as a person, your identity. Then, of course, because Medicaid is going to kick in for people who need help covering medical expenses, there's a ton of financial information that needs to be provided. A lot of this can be done through bank statements as well as tax returns, but you are going to have to provide all types of information about your assets and your income. Medicaid does have asset and income limitations. So someone who is receiving Medicaid for long-term care or in-home care, they're allowed to currently be receiving $2,901, exactly 2901, so 2,901 as of 2025 in gross income monthly. So this could be things like Social Security, or if you have a pension, or if you're getting minimum required distributions from retirement plans. So all of these go into what is your overall gross income monthly. And again, that number for 2025, if you are not over $2,901, your income would qualify automatically. If you are over that number, then there's things you can do with an attorney to make it so that you can qualify even with a higher income. Secondly, assets. The asset limit has remained at $2,000, which means at least one day out of the month, you have to be able to show that your bank account has a $2,000 or less balance and you have no other assets. Essentially, you're allowed to have $2,000 in assets. So because of this, you're going to have to provide statements to Medicaid. What do you own? So bank account statements, brokerage statements. Again, if you have retirement accounts, they're going to want access to that. If you're taking the minimum monthly distributions, then rather than looking at the overall retirement account and its principal as an asset, they'll actually look at the required monthly distributions and just count that towards your income. But be prepared to give a slew of financial documents. Another thing that sort of falls in this category is any real property that you might own. So you're permitted to have a homestead, own a homestead yourself or with a spouse. This is not going to be counted against you or counted as an asset for Medicaid purposes. But if you do own other real property, rental property, or a second home, something does need to be figured out for that because this will count as an asset for Medicaid, and you will need to show documentation regarding any real property that you own. Now, the nice thing about married couples is if only one spouse is needing to qualify for Medicaid, you can transfer an unlimited amount of assets to the other spouse, and it doesn't count against you for Medicaid purposes. It's not considered gifting for Medicaid, and you won't be penalized for transferring assets to your spouse. So this is something that can be done if you're in the process of needing Medicaid assistance and you have a spouse, or in long-term care and you have a spouse who is going to be remaining home. There can be a transfer of assets from spouse to spouse. Now, of course, the big reason for Medicaid is because there is a medical issue that needs attention, oftentimes requiring long-term nursing care, some type of memory unit care, or other type of health issue that requires more substantial care than what you would receive just at home with no help at all. So because of that, also be prepared to provide a lot of medical documentation for the Medicaid application. You're going to want to show reports that actually show what your condition is, how severe it is, the types of things that you're battling with every day, and struggles that you might have just doing daily life activities. The more you show Medicaid that there is a real medical necessity for additional care, the less the wait will be for you to receive Medicaid benefits. Medicaid operates on a sort of ranking system where how bad your condition is going to determine where you go on the wait list for Medicaid. There is a wait list. Might only be a month, might be 3 months, it may be longer depending on the scenario. So oftentimes it's a good idea that if you feel that you're kind of going down that path, or you're getting close to that path where Medicaid could be needed in the near future, it's wise to get all of this stuff together so that you're prepared and you're not waiting or paying out of pocket when you're waiting for a Medicaid application to be approved. Finally, there is also some type of like legal documentation that will often be required depending on if it applies to you. Medicare information is often gathered. Also, information on veterans benefits is typically needed if you're receiving veterans benefits. And also things like a durable power of attorney. Oftentimes we have a spouse or another family member, like a child, applying for benefits on behalf of the person who needs to be receiving Medicaid assistance. In that instance, they're acting as in their capacity as an agent, typically under a durable power of attorney, which is a legal document. So if somebody else is signing agreements for you or applying on your behalf, signing paperwork on your behalf, Medicaid is going to want to see that legal document, again, typically a durable power of attorney, that is giving them the authority, the legal authority to do that. Also, I touched on above a little bit about if your income is over, there's ways around that. So there's also ways to protect assets and income if they're above the limit. And there's documentation that you could get from an elder law attorney, someone who knows how to handle assets when they're over the limit and income over the limit, and the legal documents that go along with any sort of fix that you did for this are often also going to be requested from Medicaid. Medicaid's going to want to review them, make sure it's up to their standards. So, and this isn't even an exhaustive list, so you can tell there's a lot of information that goes into the application for Medicaid. That's why it is often suggested that you work with a qualified elder law attorney who is going to act as your advocate to assist you through the application process, because it can be very daunting. But if you have someone who's very experienced on your side, it can go much smoother, and your likelihood of getting approval in the first go around is much greater. All right, so if you have any other questions about Medicaid, what might be needed for the application, what types of documents you might need to get in place legally if you're over assets or income, or any other questions at all and you're in Florida, don't hesitate to reach out to our office. We're at Cause Law Office, the non-stuffy attorneys, and the link is in my bio.